Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Pits of Motor Chaos. This is yours, Dave. I'm going to line special guest, A-Fuel Dragster driver, Russ Parker. How's it going, Russ?
Great. Glad to be on with you.
No problem. So we had your son on last night. Now we got you on.
Yeah, that was fun. I listened to that, and I thought he did a great job. You guys had a good conversation about, found out some stuff about us and about Tyson and what we do and what drives us, and that's all good.
All right. So how did you get into drag racing, Russ?
Well, it certainly has been a family affair, and going clear back to my dad was in the Air Force, and even before that, he had his hot cars in high school, and he had a ranchero that he would race down in where my brother Randy and I were born in Roswell, New Mexico, and so the Air Force Base, and he used to race that ranchero around down there, and it kind of started a love affair with fast cars for us, and then later on, when we settled back here in Oregon, we had a chance to get involved in 100-yard sand drags. And it just kind of continued this. Of course, we're in the automotive world as far as our careers, and so we were always around cars. And so we just kept taking it up another level. And so the sand cars got faster and more exotic. And then before long, my brother Randy really kind of led us toward funny car. And so that stepped us into the alcohol ranks, and we've just really been competing there ever since.
So now, Russ, how many years did you do the sand drag thing?
Let's see. So, matter of fact, that's actually the first fast car I ever drove was in the sand before I was even had my license. So, let's see. We started that in the mid '70s and ran through the late '80s. So probably at least over a dozen years of competing in that before we switched to asphalt.
So now with the sand drag racing, were you pretty successful?
My brother won a national event. And it was so interesting because the sport, really had. I mean, there's a lot of guys that came out of the sand racing community. I mean, Alan and Blaine Johnson. You had Rick Henkelman came out of the sand racing. The Gordons, Mike Gordon, now his son Doug, running the funny car. My dad used to race against Mike in the AA Comp modified cars back then. And our brother went on and took it to another level, and he won a national event. And we were competitive, but there just wasn't the car counts. Kind of was tailing off a little bit back in those days, and we saw the writing was on the wall that we needed to, if we were going to continue to drag race, we needed to come over to the asphalt.
So what kind of car did you drive for the sand drag racing?
We had gotten into the Chevrolet Blazers. Everyone else had Jeeps, and there were a few Broncos and International Scouts and all that. But we were Blazer people, and being in the Northwest, we had the Portland Trail Blazers, and it seemed like everything. So we had Blazer Mania, and that was our series of race cars. And it started with full-size Blazers that were steel bodies, then it got fiberglass bodies, and then it was all-tube chassis and nitrous oxide and all that. And the last one was an S10 Blazer that Randy, my brother, built. And so we competed in that one, and that was the one where we had the most. And we had success at every level, including my mom, who knows how to drive a car fast. She actually won just as many trophies back in the day as my dad did, and she was fearless. And I remember that you get ruts in the sand and in the dirt, and that thing would be a handful. And I remember at Hillsboro one time, they put her in a bad spot, and that thing just hooked a left-hand turn, and she just went right through the center pile of tires and plywood signs. And I was a little bit young at that time. I was a little scared about watching that happen. And she came back from that run, got back to the pits, and she was laughing. So I figured that was that's pretty good bloodline for performance from my parents and on through to my brother, and now on to my son Tyson, and so it's all good.
So now, do sand drags still exist in this day?
One more time.
Do sand drag racing, does that still exist in this day and age?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and actually, some of it is in forms of like mud bog racing, but it's the same principle. You have big scoop tires where they attach these scoops to the racing slicks. And, look at Chris Marshall, one of the top alcohol funny car standouts right now, came from that before he switched to asphalt. So, yeah, that sport still exists. We have a local track not far from, we're very fortunate. Our home track for asphalt racing is Woodburn, but an equal distance to the south is Albany Speedway, and they still host sand drags down there, and still a lot of fun, still a fun environment. We had just kind of, drag racing's a funny thing. It's like that itch that you want to go faster and bigger and all that, and that just led us to the funny car racing. But definitely there's still a strong sand drag presence out here.
All right, so you got into asphalt racing, which you said was an alcohol funny car. What kind of alcohol funny car? What kind of make and model was it?
The very first funny car that we had as a family was my brother took the motor out of that last Blazer we raced, and he built himself a funny car. Now, originally, it's an ex-Jim Epler funny car body, and there's just so many weird little connections in our racing history that, we had that, kind of got to know Jim Epler a little bit. My brother did some work on several of his alcohol cars, and later on I went to work for Chuck Etchells in the Nitro world and worked on a car driven by Jim Epler. So it was just kind of cool, but we started with a body. It was a Pontiac Firebird body that we got from Jim Epler, and Randy put that car together, and we actually raced it in Super Comp for just 1 year, and Randy did really well with it, and we dabbled even running injected nitro a little bit back then, just a small percentage added to the alcohol, and the car I think ran down into the 820s or 30s, but we went out there and we ran an 8.92. So broke out by 0.08 of a second and lost at the regional race that was held at Woodburn back then. And that was kind of the deal. It's like, we don't want to be penalized for going too fast. I mean, bracket racing's tough, and I respect those who do it. But for us, we're just all out people. And so we wanted the next level to get into an all out class was top alcohol funny car. So that next year, Randy took some time to convert it over to top alcohol, and then my dad and I and we came along to help crew on it and put together the pieces for my brother to start in the world of alcohol funny car.
Wow! So the top alcohol funny car, how long did you guys race that one for?
Well, the end of that first year, running independently on our own, we had Randy had a chute failure and ended up at the end of the track. It back in the day before it had the full concrete, there's the old Amico metal guardrail, and he ended up into the guardrail, and he was fine, but it tore the car up pretty good. And so at that race, we had met a guy who turns out that he was the president of the Dairy Farmers of Oregon. His name is Sheldon Pratt, and got to know him and his boys. And anyway, they ended up coming on as a sponsor. So here we just tore up a race car, but at that event met the people that became our sponsors. A great group of the dairy farmers that we have up here in Oregon came on board, and they were with us for 10 years. But it enabled us to step into a car from Mike Gordon. Again, it's that connection with a sand racer friend. We bought a car from them, and then came out the next year with blue and white of the Dairy Farmers of Oregon, and Randy campaigned that car, and then went on to have a lot of success with it. He won the Seattle National event in 1995, and we were with the Dairy Farmers clear until 2000. So from basically 1990 to 2000, we raced under that group of the Dairy Farmers of Oregon, and then have continued on even when that association ended. Randy has continued to run a variety of alcohol funny cars and nostalgia funny cars, and we've kind of done the same thing down here, and then subsequently rolled it over and gave my son a chance to get behind the wheel as well.
So when did you get into Nitro?
Well, Greg and Robbie Lawrence of Commercial Business Machines that own the A-Field Dragster that I drive, we've been friends for a long, long time. And he had helped us with the alcohol funny car as a crew member and just being good friends. friends. And so he had raced in Pro Mod for a little bit, and we'd always, one or the other of us needed something, we'd help each other out. And but he'd come to the races with us, and it was just a combination of things that led him into wanting to step up into a faster class, and he developed a relationship with Jerry Darian, and got to know him, and worked out a deal to buy a car from him. And so this was back in the 98, 99, right around there, when we were still running our alcohol car with the dairy farmers. And so he started running that program. And so when there was just a couple times where I had the opportunity to help him out, I even got a chance to drive that car way back when, in like 2003 or 4. A good friend of ours, Garrett Bateman, that drives for Rick Hinkleman, that my son has worked on their car. He licensed in the same car that I'm driving today, and went to Sonoma in our very first race together, went to the final round there. And so I've been around that car a lot. I've helped Greg when I could, but then a couple years ago, when it was like becoming apparent that it was just time to give my son a chance, because I'd been given a chance by my parents to race alcohol funny car, and my brother had taught me how to drive it, and there was just so many people who gave me opportunities. It's like it was time to give Tyson his chance, but I didn't lose the urge and the itch to drive. And so the opening happened for me to be able to drive Greg's car, so we drove it a little bit. I ran it a few times last year, and then we kind of upped the program this year, and got after a little bit more, and kind of ran as a team where our pits are together between Tyson and the alcohol funny car, and then Greg and Robbie's car with me driving it. And so we just open our pits up together and race together, lend each other a hand when we need it. And I got if you don't mind me going on and not babble too much, but I got a great story about this car that I'm driving, the Safe Fuel car. Do you remember Melanie Troxel?
Yeah.
Okay, so Melanie Troxel drove for Jerry Darian when he had the In-N-Out Burger sponsorship. And so they came up to Woodburn, and they'd run up and down the West Coast and all over. I mean, they were a very high-profile team, and Melanie did a great job for Jerry. And so they were up at Woodburn for a race in which we were running our funny car. And Melvin Record was an employee at NHRA that did the marketing, and just a pleasure to work with. And so he put together a deal where it was kind of a meet and greet thing with a couple drivers with the local media. And so we did this at the Tower at the Woodburn Drag Strip. And so it was Melanie and I. And I had never met Melanie before, and certainly she was well more known in the drag racing world. But they wanted to have a funny car guy, and they wanted to have her. And so Melvin had put that together, and we had a chance to do this little interview thing. And it was just so funny because it became more of a Melanie and I would talk, and they were just listening because I was so interested in her story about how she got involved in drag racing, and that she had her dad had raced, and they'd been involved in alcohol funny car, and I don't know that I've ever met a more competitive person than Melanie Troxel. And but it ended with us talking about she was clearly interested in alcohol funny car, and I was very interested in the Dragster. And I just kind of threw it out there, like, well, how about you let me drive your car, and we'll let you drive ours. And it was just kind of an offhand comment and stuff. But the irony is, that's the car that Greg owns now, and that's the car I'm driving today. So, point of all that is, if you're out there, Melanie Troxel, and you're listening, and we have an alcohol funny car, so we can hold up our end of the deal. I've got a chance to drive your car, you got a chance now to come drive our funny car. We can make that work.
So now you're driving 95% nitro with that Dragster?
Yeah, the rules have varied throughout the years as far as just to try to keep parity between us and the alcohol dragsters that run in the same category. But yeah, they settled on 95%, and so yep, that's what we have in the tank. And we watch that very closely. Greg and Robbie do the fuel stand. Another one of our crew members does that too, and so we're very careful to mix that and get everything we can out of that. We also chill our fuel. That's a very important component for the nitro guys. We are limited to 40-degree fuel. But what it does, it kind of when the temperature's up a little bit outside, you can kind of fool the fuel into even making a little more power if you can get it colder. So I mean, it's something that we all do in the A-fuel world. But yeah, so we have as close to 40-degree fuel as we can get, and 95% nitro.
So now, what's the quickest run you've had with that dragster?
We had not ever been in the 520s until this year. This year we ran at Seattle at the regional race. We had made it to the final at the national event at Seattle, but had not been, the quickest we went there, I think, was a 5:32. Then at the regional race 2 weeks later, we dipped into the 20s, ran our first one with the 529, backed it up with the 528, and finally got over 270 this year. So the cars performed really well. Greg's done a great job with the tune-up. My brother had early in the year gave us some tips that really kind of helped unlock some things for the tuning window, and Greg's just taken it and run with it from there. But and then we tested this last weekend at Woodburn just to, we just want to go faster and get more consistent. And we ran our first ever 20 down here at Woodburn, 528, 269 on Saturday. So we're really pleased with the performance of the car.
So she's been running good this year?
Excellent. And the thing is, it's one thing to run good. It's another thing if you can run good and not hurt parts. And that's been a huge thing for us. The Nitro Methane cars can, when they're right, they're an amazing thing. Make a lot of power. Don't necessarily have to hurt them. But when things go sideways, they become a bomb. And I think Tyson yesterday had mentioned about the opportunity we had to work together on Garrett Bateman's car at Vegas, and it was a great experience being able to work with each other, and that was Garrett's first national event win, and to be there for it, just a great experience. But later on, we went back to Vegas for another event, and he had a valve train failure that literally blew over half the cylinder head off, and of course vaporized the intake manifold and broke the frame and did all kinds of things. And Garrett was fine, but it was a major deal. Pomona was the next weekend, and so Garrett and my son Tyson thrashed to get that car ready and back. And so the point of all that is when things go sideways in one of these cars, they go really sideways. And torching cylinder heads is not an uncommon thing at all, where they just try to lift the head off and they just blow up half through the aluminum. It's like that flame don't care. It's going to cut a hole. And those holes are expensive. So we've been able to correct a lot of that we've had problems with in the past, and get the car happy and to where it's running very respectably, but also not hurting parts. So that's been a really good thing.
Now, I don't know if everybody that's listening knows this or not, but the nitro cars, you got to start them off on alcohol, right?
Yes, because they need some. Yeah, nitro is a volatile thing, and so yes, we actually have a dribbler tank system that we start them on alcohol, get the motor a little bit of heat in it, so that it can then take the nitro once we pour it to it. The big show cars, Top Fuel and Fuel Funny car, don't have to do that. The blower makes a big difference in the characteristic of how you can start them and some of the procedures. But A-fuel cars are very finicky about that kind of thing, and you have to be very, very careful. But yes, starting them on alcohol is an absolute must.
Yeah, I heard before if you start them straight nitro, it'll blow up.
Yes, and that's happened both on starting line or back in the pits too. If you that's the thing about nitro, it doesn't need necessarily. I mean, you can pour nitro on the ground, throw fire at it with matches or whatever, it's not going to light. But if you give it a heat source and compression, and that doesn't need to have an ignition source in terms of like a spark plug, but if it just has a heat and compression, it will explode. And so there's people that have literally blown cylinder heads off the cars in the pits, and or at least valve covers, and it's dangerous stuff. This is a serious sport, and you always have to be on your game. And and it's not just with this handling of the nitromethane motor, starting it and shutting it off and clearing the motor once it's been shut off, but even just around the starting line, things happen. You just always have to be on your game.
So where do you guys purchase your nitro methane from?
Uh, Sunoco provides great nitro from we're at national events. Then when we're running at regional races or like this last weekend we were testing, we get through local racers like Bucky Austin up in Tacoma. Is a distributor for nitromethane, so we can get it from them. And it comes in a barrel, and it's heavy. That stuff is dense fuel, so it's part of what makes it make a lot of power. But yeah, it's expensive too.
Yeah, that Bucky Austin's funny car, that thing's on fire this year. They can't stop winning.
Oh, yeah, Bobby Cottrell is doing a great job for them, and they are just a machine. Very impressive. Very impressive.
All right, so now for you, Russ, when you started drag racing, asphalt racing, did you have any inspirational drivers out there? Any John Forsters, anybody like that out there that inspired you?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a number of guys. I really respect guys like Tim Wilkerson, who came out as an independent and really grew his program up, handles himself really, really well, and tons of respect for him. Certainly knew Jim Epler. It was fun to work with guys like Chuck Etchells, and that guy was fearless. I don't know, you've seen all the stuff that John Force has been through, his crashes, I saw Elvis at 1,000 feet and all that kind of stuff. I don't know that there's a tougher guy in drag racing than Chuck Etchells. That guy was an incredible driver, and I don't know I've ever met a tougher individual. And we lost him a couple years ago, but he was fun to work for, and I had a chance to work for when he had Roland Leong at one point as a crew chief working there. And there's a little Roland story here. When my dad started his auto repair business here in Salem, we were in a shop that was right next to a Napa store. And so Roland Leong was rolling through town on his way to a match race up at Portland at PIR, and this would have been like early 70s, 71-ish, somewhere right around there. And so he had done a display at the Napa store with his Hawaiian funny car. And so we had a chance to really check that car out. Matter of fact, the car stayed in our shop overnight before he went on up to Portland the next day. And so there's a picture of my brother and I as little kids standing next to a very young Roland Leong in front of his funny car in 1971. And then fast forward, in 2001, I'm working for Chuck Etchells. We have Roland Leong tuning the car for the one that Jim Epler was driving, and we debuted a new Camaro funny car on the starting line at U.S. Nationals in 2001. So 30 years later, here I am standing next to Roland Leong, working on a car with Roland Leong at the U.S. Nationals. And then subsequently, Roland went into the nostalgia world of Nitro Funny Car after he's done with the Big Show stuff, and we would be at the same races as with him up in like Mission, Canada. So we have another picture of my brother with his alcohol funny car, and me working with my brother, and then Roland up there because he was working with guys like Tim Boychuk and some of the others, and so it was just so cool because we've had a chance to meet some really big names in drag racing, got to know some of them, and so many of these guys are just guys. They're car guys, and they love racing, and they love their fans, and it's just it's a neat opportunity to be a part of. And so Roland and guys like that, it really inspired me to want to continue on in drag racing. And for a while, I really, really wanted to try to get into the world of professional drag racing as a driver, and that door just never opened up for me. And that's okay. I mean, I'm thoroughly enjoying what I'm doing now at the alcohol level.
No, that's awesome. So now, how many events have you ran this year, Russ?
Let's see, we've done about half dozen. We don't run a ton, a lot of local stuff, but we've probably done about 6 races with both the funny car and the A-Fuel car. We're going to, with Tyson, we're going to go ahead and do the swing there at the end of the year where we do the Vegas National, the Vegas Regional, and then Pomona all in a row. So we'll have a 3-week swing to finish out the season with the alcohol funny car. The Dragster, we're still working out on what we're going to do next with it. I got a good friend of mine, Mike Sharplow. Sharplow Motorsports up here runs a lot of nostalgia funny cars. He has a whole fleet of cars, and he and his wife Susan have been a great help for us as well. They've helped us with the funny car and the A-Field car, and Mike's going to get his license in Greg's A-Field car that I've been driving. So we're looking for the right weather combination of that coming up to be able to get him out there and get him his license. Then we'll go from there.
Now, when you take the A-Field Dragster out, how many crew members you have, and who are your crew members?
So, yeah, we have a great crew. Of course, Greg and Robbie. Greg's owner and tuner, and his wife, Robbie. She works on the car. And so then we have Stan and his girlfriend, Josie, Stan Weiss, doing bottom end. We've got Chris Derby on the clutch. And we got Keith and his wife, Cindy. Keith does top end. And Cindy just does whatever's needed. She keeps the car clean, helps me with the parachutes. So we got a great crew. And we really work well together. And we had a lot of fun. There's something about. I mean, I benefit from the thrill of the actual ride in the car, but it's as fun as that is. It's part about being part of a team and working together, finding a way to cover for each other and get the car ready for the next round. There's just something about that dynamic. It's really special, and while it's really great to be. Yeah, and you make a good run like we ran 528 and all that. You're at the top end getting out of the car and stuff. You don't get to be a part of that celebration on the starting line. I mean, you see people, the raw emotion of what people go through on the starting line when they see the car. They work so hard, blood, sweat, and tears poured into this thing. And you see that go out there and perform well. It's just a great feeling. And so that team chemistry is a great thing. And of course, my partner in the funny car, Barry Hoyland, has been a great help with us with the Dragster as well. Couldn't be doing this without him. Again, I mentioned Mike Sharplow, and of course, my entire family. I couldn't do this without them.
Now, do you have any sponsors for the Dragster?
What we're doing, we have Greg's business, Commercial Business Machines, specializing in copiers and anything to do with integrating systems that make your office work better. That's what Greg does. We have my business, Wayne Parker's Auto Electric, that we have partnered together in getting that car. We have NGK Spark Plugs has helped us in the past. Clean Boost Oil is a product we use, and it's been great for us. So Super Vinyl Signs, Organ Design, and we got a lot of good people that have helped us out. So very, very grateful to each and every one of them.
So now, after all the years of drag racing, Russ, what still keeps you passionate about it?
Just a deep-seated desire to compete at a high level of something that not everybody can do or would want to do. I mean, I always said that driving one of these cars, really, if you had a desire to do it, an opportunity, when things go right, it's not that bad, but when things go wrong and being able to recover well and stay focused, but just the competition of team versus team as well as the individual driver against each other. So the starting line, the whole procedure there of trying to get the best reaction time you can. I take great pride in doing that, and then just working as a team is something that is. So very, very hard to do because it's just hard work. Not just at the track, but I mean even the in between time of getting the car ready, filling the stuff in the trailer, making sure there's water and ice for the crew and food and all that. I mean, there's just a thousand logistical problems every time you go out, and overcoming that and finding a way, and then to go out and just compete with guys who oftentimes, we do this on a little bit of a shoestring compared to some of the teams out there. And so when you can go out and compete with guys who are heavily funded and run with them and sometimes beat them, that's what drives me. Just that deep-seated need to compete.
Now, if someone's listening to the interview, Russ, and they're like thinking to themselves, man, I want to drive a Nitro Dragster, what kind of advice would you give that person?
Be prepared to be humbled, because these cars are aggressive. They are I guess I'll say it, it's like a mean old dog. It's going to try to establish the dominance over you, and you have to find a way to overcome that. But it is something that is attainable. To get into it, the best thing to do is to I mean, obviously it helps if you have some sponsorship help, but ultimately you just got to have desire. You have a desire to do it, because there's going to be a lot of times you're going to go, why am I doing this? Because it's not easy. And but the rewards are so tremendous. I mean, I'll use an example of a race from last year where at the regional race at Woodburn, we had not qualified very well, and we drew the world champ Joey Severance round one. And on paper, he should have beat us. And so you got to give yourself a chance. And this is part of the story of what it takes to drive one of these things. You got to give yourself a chance. Well, round one, I didn't give us a chance because I went out and red lighted. And we went down the track. It wasn't a spectacular run. It was a mid 540, but Joey smoked the tires, were shook, and had to shut off. And the winner of that round had a bye into the final. So I threw away a chance to race in the final because I red lit. And I was just so disappointed, not just to myself, but I was more torn up because I felt like I let my team down. And it was an emotional time in the pit when I was apologizing to Greg for letting them down. But let me tell you, that moment is etched in my brain as one that drew us closer, because he knew how much I cared, how badly I wanted to win, and not just win for myself, but win for the team. And so those are moments that are so special in drag racing, because there's a ton of emotion packed into this, the intensity of these short runs. I mean, we're just a little over 5 seconds each run, but there's so much energy and motion and energy that's poured into these programs to do this that it's pretty overwhelming. And when you have those moments, whether you've done well or whether you've struggled, you do it as a team. You do it as a team, and to be a part of that is so special. And so, I'd say to people who want to get into drag racing, don't get discouraged easily, because it can, you're going to be tested. But the rewards of how you work together as a team are just, it's hard to find that in this world. It really is.
Yep, you gotta have that chemistry.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So now, where do you get all your fire safety equipment from?
We're very fortunate. We have for years been friendly competitors with Dennis Taylor when he raced an alcohol funny car. We go back quite a ways there. We've actually, I'll digress for just a moment. We were blessed to have a crew chief by the name of Ora Vasquez work with us for a couple of years. The guy was a renowned guy in the world of alcohol. He was crew chief for Corey McLenithan when he broke into Alcohol Dragster, and they won the very first national event they went to together. They won it, and so Ora was just a fantastic guy, and so we were very fortunate to have him. And then after our deal with the dairy farmers ended, and we got out of it for a little bit, Ora became crew chief for Dennis. And they had great success together as well. So we've been good friends with Dennis, but Dennis has Taylor Motorsports that provides all of our seat belts. I have fire suit from Dennis, our ballistic bags that are around the blower and for the lower containment. That's all from Dennis. Parachutes and his son Justin. They do a great job, and they were longtime Southern California guys, but just in the last couple of years, they moved up here to Albany, Oregon. And it's just so great to have them right close by. I mean, I would use their products whether they were on the other side of the globe, because they're that good. But it's really nice to have them close by.
So now, what would be some of the milestones that you reached in your drag racing career so far?
Probably one of the ones that we're most proud of was, because it represents a season of excellence, was that to finish in the top 10. That's a goal of so many teams. And so in the year 2000, we overcame a very slow start in which we did not qualify at the Winter Nationals, but then we got turned around and finished strong and actually finished number 7 in the country. So that to me was, and we've had some wins along the way at a regional level. I've been in 2 national event finals in my career, came up short on both of those, but it still is very, very cool to have at least been in some final rounds. But finishing number in the top 10 for a season at this level was a great accomplishment. So I'm very, very proud of that.
Okay. Now, in your drag racing career, have you had any accidents?
I've got a couple things that happened that were interesting, and I've had a couple of times where I've had parachute or brake failures where I've been off the end of the track or into a catch net, or just out into a field. But the one that kind of keeps coming around is a steering wheel episode that a lot of people that may not necessarily know it was me, but the video has made its way around a lot and been seen millions of times. But there's I was running the Nostalgia Funny car, and I took off. I was running at Woodburn, and it looks like the steering wheel simply came off the shaft, but actually the shaft broke. But the steering wheel came off in my hands after I had already launched the car and had just shifted into second gear. And this was a nostalgia car, so we actually, it wasn't the traditional air-shifted buttons on the steering wheel like those of you who've seen in-cockpit video of alcohol cars will see guys pushing buttons on the steering wheel. That's actually how you shift the transmission on these cars. But in this car, it was the old school pull the levers that are down there between your legs. And so I pulled the lever into second gear, and the steering shaft broke, and the steering wheel came off my hands. And so it ended up being some unintended comedy the way it turned out, because I fumble with the steering wheel, and I'm flailing around inside the car, and the car bounces off the guardrail once and then twice, and then as the car starts rolling out, I realize it's not going to hit anything anymore, and so I actually flip my visor up. I'm looking for the steering wheel to kind of try to figure out. I want to know what happened, right? And so it was one of the first times I'd ever had a GoPro camera inside the car with me, and so after we got the car off the track, and it really wasn't that bad of damage, but after we got the car off the track and got back to the pit, we were like, oh, let's take a look at the GoPro. And so it was just so funny because everyone's fairly serious up to this point because it was an incident. It could have gotten ugly, but we watch it, and I could just kind of tell that everyone was so close to wanting to laugh. And it ended up being a pretty funny little video. Anyway, it's for those of you who want to see it, if you for some reason haven't seen it, I mean, it's made its rounds on Facebook and on YouTube, but it's Wallbanger 1. If you were to search Wallbanger 1, you'd be able to find it. But, yeah, that's what it's like to lose a steering wheel in a funny car. My first thought, the very first thought when it happened, I thought it just came off, because, these steering wheels are made with quick removal. They have a little spring-loaded device that allows you to take the steering wheel off and set it aside, and it's on the spline. And I just thought that the steering wheel did come off, and so there was this brief moment. I thought, can I put the steering wheel back on? And that's stupid. Maybe I can grab what's left of the steering shaft and just kind of hold it and kind of keep the car off the wall. And that didn't work. And then my next thought was, I don't have time. I have a busy life, and like so many of us anymore. And I'm thinking, I don't have time to fix this, because I know at that point I'm going to hit the wall. But again, it just wasn't that big of a deal. We had Austin's Auto Body, who has been sponsors on that car. They took care of the cosmetic damage. It didn't hurt the chassis at all. Folded up a set of headers, and we had to put a new steering box on it. That was about it. But the video's gotten a lot of airtime.
All right, so I got a few fun questions for you before we close out. You have any hobbies outside of drag racing?
Well, I know you guys hit on this yesterday because Tyson's involved in the fishing business with my dad at Good Day Fishing, gooddayfishing.com. And so we do like to go fishing when we get the chance. We have out here in the Northwest, we have a lot of great fisheries for salmon, sturgeon, bottom fishing, halibut. So we got a lot of opportunity to go fishing. So I love to do that when I get the opportunity.
You have any pre-race rituals or superstitions when you're on the track?
You know, that's a great question. I actually I have routines. I don't know that I would so much go so far as to call them superstitions, but I guess you could say because of the way they are routines. I mean, I always pack the right side parachute first. I always get in the car from the same direction. There's just I don't eat once the race day starts. I don't eat because food just doesn't set well, and until I'm done, and then I eat like a horse. But during the day I don't eat, so it's just little things like that, and I don't. I'll throw one more at you. Okay, at you'll get a kick out of this. So at Woodburn, there's restrooms on both sides of the track, and I got the one that I usually go to, and there are 3 stalls in it. And if it's at all possible, I go in the stall in the middle because that symbolizes going straight down the middle of the track. How's that?
All right. Now, if you could time travel back in time, would you do anything differently with your drag racing career?
The only thing I would do different is enjoy the moment. Toward the end of our run with the Dairy Farmers of Oregon, I was I had such a desire to get into the nitro world, to have a chance to race against someone like the John Force or Ron Capps or some of these guys, so I tried really hard to find ways to develop some sponsorship and some funding to where I could maybe go get a ride in that world. And I think in doing that, I didn't fully appreciate what I had racing with my family, my mom and dad, and the time with the Dairy Farmers of Oregon. And it's one of those things when that sponsorship ended and then that program stopped for a while. It's like, man, I didn't fully appreciate what I had, because we had a great program. Like I said, we finished 7th in the country. We were a very competitive car, and that's outside of that. As far as the opportunity to drive a lot of different race cars, I've been really blessed. So no, I wouldn't change much else.
Most embarrassing moment on the track?
Probably that. Let's see. There'd be definitely that red light against Joey. There's embarrassing moments, and then there's moments that really hurt your heart. I mean, that one was really a tough one because I know I let my team down. But I mean, as far as like doing, we were racing nostalgia front motor cars, a Northwest Eliminator deal, and I think I was racing my sister-in-law Kim, and it was just qualifying, and qualifying runs matter as far as your ET, but not so much on the starting line. But we want to beat each other so bad that I wanted to teach her a lesson on the starting line. I left before the tree was activated, and so I didn't get any time at all. And so that was it. See, now that's embarrassing. You have the moments where you let your team down. That's painful. But stuff like that where you leave before the tree's activated, that's embarrassing. So that's probably one of my top moments.
Fondest memory of your drag racing career?
There's a couple. In our first year with Ora Vasquez as crew chief, we had done a little testing in Phoenix and struggled with some things. We had some ignition problems, and we went to Pomona, and no one expected anything out of us because we hadn't done anything yet. And in the first 2 rounds of qualifying, we really didn't do anything much. I mean, we ran some 5s, but nothing real good. It all came together in the 3rd run, and we went 574, which at the time qualified us number 2, and that's a field that had Bucky Austin, Frank Manzo, Pat Austin, Gasparelli, all the hitters, down there, and we were number 2 qualifier, and right behind John Weaver, and we got to the top, and we went from we hadn't barely run in the 580s, and we went and ran 574, and so I still have a picture of on the top end where my dad got to the car, and and we're hugging, and Aura's there, and Aura just looks proud as a peacock. And that was such